So over in the East, let's start with the Boston Bruins. Obviously a magical season, 65 wins, just incredible. The best regular season in NHL history. That's just absolutely wild that we saw that this year. Up against the Florida Panthers, who surprisingly get in. They beat my Sabres in by just a point, absolutely heartbreaking. But we get Boston and Florida in the first round. So I'm going to say we're all taking Boston here. Maybe not, but I would expect that. Anyway, Case, Boston, Florida.
Yeah, despite Florida having a pretty good Q4 and me being pretty heavy on them making the playoffs, I've got Boston, obviously. But the big kicker here is I don't know if I've ever picked a sweep, and I'm going to pick Boston sweeping Florida. I think that the only way that Florida is going to beat a team out of the gates is if they can piss them off with Matt Tkachuk and a couple other guys on the team like Lomberg or whoever in the bottom six. But you can't out Boston. So I think they're just going to get absolutely steamrolled, and can't wait for you to clip that when Florida upsets Boston.
Case, do you still want to bet on a sweep, knowing that both of their goalies, Boston that is, are game time decisions tonight? So is Patrice Bergeron. We're not sure about Taylor Hall if he's ready to go. All of those injuries and the flu bug that is running through their dressing room right now rampantly. Are you still confident in taking a sweep?
The flu thing is sketchy, but when it comes to injuries, Ullmark's going to play, and it's going to be like 2 months from now we're going to hear, Ullmark had a broken spine and high ankle sprain and a broken pelvis, and he still played. So I'm not worried about it.
I think he just has the flu, man. But but yeah, that's just what I wanted to mention. Only because you said a sweep, and I saw that news today. There's a bunch of injuries and the flu running through.
The only comment I was making there is that NHL players will play. It's the playoffs.
Yes,
it doesn't matter what's going on.
They called up their AHL goalie today. I doubt he plays or maybe even dresses. Who knows? The game starts in 10 minutes, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, all of that being said, I'm taking Boston in 5. I think Florida proved on the back half of the season that they kind of figured out how to play together. They figured out how to play with the new pieces that they have and under their new coach. And they found their goalie too, Alex Lyon, who is starting game 1 for Florida. And he kind of dragged them into the playoffs all by himself. He came in as an older guy who didn't have much experience, who played really, really well down the stretch. So Florida kind of figured it out. But all of that being said, this is maybe the best team, this Boston team, maybe the best team that we've ever seen in the regular season with our own eyes. Record aside, I know they set the record and everything for most points and most wins, but you can argue that the Tampa team a few years ago was maybe better, but all I'm saying is that Boston is in that conversation for the best team that we've ever seen on the ice with our own eyes, which is just ridiculous. So I can't bet against them as much as I hate their guts. Boston in 5.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Tampa there and the year that they had 62 wins and then got swept by the Blue Jackets. I mean, this is just setting up perfectly for another upset like that. But yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. I give Florida 1 win in this series. I will take Boston in 5. They're so deep from top to bottom. They loaded up at the deadline. I think it was so smart adding a guy like Garnet Hathaway. They added all this team is full of pricks, even more than it already was.
I couldn't believe that.
Bertuzzi, Hathaway, it's crazy. And, Orlov has been a hell of an addition on the back end. We talked about how good Ekholm has been with the Oilers. Orlov as well. I mean, he just fit like a glove there. So Boston is so deep. That core, they know how to win, and they are determined to get one last kick at the can here with this group. And then with Florida, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk will get Hart Trophy votes for sure. I think he has been their driver all season long. And then with Alex Lyon, it's a nice story, but you just wonder how long he can keep this up for. And I do think that time is going to run out on that Cinderella story of Alex Lyon. So I've got Florida getting one win here. I think this one is going to get nasty between these two, but Boston in 5 games, they're clearly the better squad.
One thing going against Boston, not only in this series, but if they make it through every other series that they play in this year, is, can things be perfect all season long? We haven't seen that in a lot of, we haven't seen that almost ever. President's Trophy winners typically lose in the first or second round. That's what history says. Can it be perfect forever? I don't know. A guy like Brad Marchand hasn't been scoring at the clip that we're used to him scoring on the back half of the season. I only know that because I had him in fantasy, and he was a large disappointment. But can things go perfectly forever? Who knows? This team is clearly the favorite, but that's the only thing working against them right now is the fact that everything has gone absolutely perfectly all season long.
Yeah, that's why we just looking back at that year that Tampa had and getting swept. I mean, this is just set up perfectly for another upset, although I don't think it's going to happen. But, I mean, anything can happen this time of year, so there you go.
It'll happen in round 2.
The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Here we go, Chad. We'll get into this series. This is a big one. Talk about another series for the second year in a row. It went the distance, 7 games last year. I think a lot of people would pick this series to go the distance again. We know that Tampa Bay is going to start without Tanner Jeannot. We know the mountain of pressure that is on the Toronto Maple Leafs to get this done, especially facing this team for the second year in a row in the first round. But it is the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's not going to be easy, but let's get into this one. Leafs and Lightning for the second year in a row.
Yeah, I'll go first. It makes sense that I go first for the Leafs, right? I am going to go with Toronto, actually, in this series. And it's going to be in 6 games. Only because if it goes to 7 games, Toronto will 100% lose this series. So they need to win it in 6. They cannot go to 7. They will get destroyed in the mental game. If they go to 7, I'm going to say it one more time. Do not go to 7, Toronto. You'll win it in 6. This team, man, they've finally added the way a cup contender should add going into the playoffs. The team knows that front office has they have all of the front office support going into this, all of the confidence. I think that this is the year that the Toronto Maple Leafs finally win a series, and they're going to beat a pretty good team in Tampa to do it. The only thing that scares the living daylights out of me is Vasilevsky.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll say this, guys, to start, and I believe I started the episode by saying it, but I'm ready to get hurt again. But this year feels different. Clip that when they lose in 7 games at home. But this year feels different, boys. Like you said, Case, the ads that they made at the deadline just make this team so much better top to bottom. If you told me at the start of the year that Ryan O'Reilly would be our third-line center, I wouldn't have believed you, because what a player to add. Noel Acciari has been an incredible fit for this team, the perfect bottom 6 player that you need. Brings that bite, finishes checks, is responsible defensively and with the puck through the neutral zone, forechecks, everything you want in a bottom 6 player. That's exactly what the Leafs need. Last year, the fourth line for the Leafs going into Game 1 was Clifford, Simmons, and someone else. It wasn't Jason Spezza. He was scratched. I think it might have been... Who was the guy they got with Giordano in that trade from Seattle?
Colin Blackwell.
It was so it was those 3 players: Blackwell, Clifford, and Simmons. Clifford played 24 seconds of that entire series, got suspended, never saw the ice again. Clifford now is like the 25th forward for the Maple Leafs. Like, he's so far down the depth chart now, it's ridiculous. So their bottom six is better built. Their top six is better built with the addition of Ryan O'Reilly, because it looks like he's starting at second line center. Their defense, adding a guy like Jake McCabe, has stabilized that blue line. You know, it hasn't been a great year for Morgan Riley, all things considered, but now he doesn't have to play or be deployed by Sheldon Keefe as a two-way defenseman, because that's not what he is. He can staple Morgan Riley next to someone else, like I think right now it's Luke Schenn, and then you could put McCabe and Brody against the most difficult competition on the other side. And then in net, Ilya Samsonov has had an incredible year for the Maple Leafs. I believe he's currently top 10 in goals saved above expected. I'd have to double check that, but a great year, all things considered. And then backing him up, Joseph Woll, who has emerged recently as a legit option if you need him. And then, oh yeah, Matt Murray, two-time Stanley Cup champion, is there if he gets healthy in during this series. So all things considered, I think the Leafs are better top to bottom than they were last season. I think Tampa Bay is worse top to bottom than they were last season, especially on the back end. And I guess in net it stays the same because Vasilevsky is a god no matter what. But I just think Toronto's the better team, and the only reason why someone would pick Tampa Bay in this series is history, and I'm just hoping that the Maple Leafs sort of rewrite history this series and win in 6 games, and that's my prediction.
I'm really, for your sake, my dad's sake, all the other Leaf fans that I know out there, I really hope that this is the year, man, because I really do like this team on paper, and I haven't really been able to say that for a long time, it feels like. Love the additions of O'Reilly and McCabe, not only because they're former Sabres, but they're the right pieces. Jake McCabe, this is his first postseason, believe it or not, so he's going to be pumped for this. Bring back a guy like Luke Schenn, who has just turned into such a reliable shutdown defenseman later on in his career. Sam Lafferty as well. I really like him as a bottom six forward. I think all the pieces are there. You mentioned Achari as well. I forgot to mention him, but I like that. I like him as a player as well. This team has all the pieces. It's not just up to the superstars, the guys at the top. They've got guys sprinkled throughout the rest of the lineup that can really pitch in and make an impact. So I will take the Maple Leafs again, and I agree they've got to get it done on the road in Tampa Bay. It cannot go to another Game 7 in Toronto, in that building, that nervous energy in the building, in the locker room, and in the entire city in general. They got to get it done in 6 games on the road in Tampa Bay, and they've got to get the lead in this series right off the bat. You can't go up 3-1 and then drop a couple of games or whatever. They have to get on Tampa right away, have the lead throughout the whole series, and take this in 6.
Hart, you don't have to keep saying believe it or not every time a former Sabre has never played in the playoffs. We believe it.
I wanted to mention when you were talking about the former Sabres, Ryan O'Reilly's first hat trick in Buffalo came while he was playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so I thought that was funny. And also wanted to mention this. Over the last 3 playoff runs that the Tampa Bay Lightning have made, only 2 teams have outscored them in a playoff series. One, the Colorado Avalanche, who finally beat them and prevented the three-peat. And number 2 was the Maple Leafs last year. They outscored Tampa by 1 goal. All things considered, guys, I think Toronto's the better team. They should win this series. 6 games from all of us, I think, is fitting. Let's just enjoy it and hope they can get it done.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for them, man. I want them to get by that first round.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm rooting for them this series.
Yeah. Until the conference finals, eh, Case?
No, just the first series.
Rude.
All right, Carolina and the New York Islanders. It's been an up and down year for the Islanders, although they're another team with an incredible goaltender in Elias Sorokin. Antti Ranta is going to be the guy to start Game 1 for the Carolina Hurricanes, who are banged up, as we know, going into this series. Carolina and the New York Islanders. Case.
This is... I'll probably watch 30 minutes of this series only because that they're on 30 minutes before the Boston game tonight. This is going to be such a defensive stalemate, and it's going to be just, I don't know, kind of tough to watch, in my opinion. I think it's going to be an absolute battle. Like, it is going to wear down both teams, and for that reason, like, I'm rooting for the Islanders here because I need them to wear down the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina is still a good team despite a lot of injuries, but they're going to have a tough time scoring, just as the Islanders have a tough time scoring. So it's going to be a weird series. Both teams are going to get beaten up in this one, and it's going to benefit either the Devils or the Rangers, honestly. But I have Carolina winning in 7 games.
Wow. Okay, I've got Carolina in 6. I had a tough time with this series, though, because, you know, the numbers tell the story that Carolina is far and away the better team, but my brain and thinking about what playoff hockey looks like and feels like, the New York Islanders have a great chance to win this series, you know, because they're a heavy defensive playoff team, and you know, so I think it could go either way. I am going Carolina in 6, though. I thought it was strange that they announced that Antti Ranta is their starter going into Game 1. That worried me a little bit. Because guess who's at the other end? One of the best goalies in the league, potential Vezina winner this season in Ilya Sorokin. So, like, that's not a matchup that I think you win no matter who you put in net in Carolina. But I think just the depth, the offense, and really good underrated defense on this Carolina team, I think just takes them, lets them win this series in 6 games. That's my prediction. I will say, though, on the other side, the Islanders did get Matt Barzal back for this series. So that's a guy who has been out down the stretch for the Islanders. You know, like, remember when Bo Horvat first got there? He was playing with Barzal. They had a great connection. He was putting up points, and then Barzal goes out. And then Bo Horvat, similar to what Barzal was before Horvat got there, was sort of on an island. Well, now he's got his line mate back, his buddy, his partner, so that could be a dangerous line, and they could score more than we actually think. So we'll see what happens in this series, but I'm still confident in Carolina. I think this could be the year that they prove doubters wrong and finally get over the hump, because they've been there for years as sneakily one of the best teams in the NHL. I want to say for the past, like, 5 years, but they haven't had the playoff success. So I think this is the year for Carolina. 6 games.
I'd be remiss to not mention Rod the Bod. I think he is an absolute factor in the playoffs when it comes to his coaching ability and how he can get a team to rally around him. So Carolina definitely has that going for them. And yeah, Carolina has been sneaky good in the playoffs every single year. So a lot of experience there. You love the back end. All of this being said, I have Carolina in 7, but Carolina fans are going to be like, why don't you have Carolina sweeping in 3 games? It's like, well, they can't. That's literally impossible. But yeah.
Yeah, here come the comments on YouTube.
You know, guys, at the start of the year, this was my Stanley Cup winner selection, the Carolina Hurricanes. That's obviously changed now, I think, with the injuries to Svechnikov and to Max Pacioretty. That's really tough. And I listened to a really good interview that Elliot Friedman did with Rod the Bod, and he mentioned that those are 2 huge blows. But, man, they still have guys like Aho, Martin Necas, who has really turned into a star in the NHL. He's broken out. I think a guy like Seth Jarvis could be a factor in this series, just playing that physical dump and chase kind of hockey that Carolina plays. This series is going to be a battle. Case, I'm kind of with you. This is the one series I look at that I probably won't watch much of, but it's going to be low scoring and a defensive battle all the way through. But I still like Carolina. I think their blue line is too good. The additions of guys like Brent Burns at the start of the year, I think he's going to be huge in this series coming off a big year. Shane Gostisbehere, another defenseman who's fit like a glove. Talking about a lot of defensemen this episode that went to new teams at the deadline and have just fit perfectly. So I still really like Carolina. They're well coached. A lot of fun to watch. I think that atmosphere in Raleigh is going to be incredible. And, I've got the Hurricanes in 7 games as well. I think it goes the distance.
Yeah, it's not really against Carolina where I'm saying I'm not interested in watching this season. It's more the Islanders. Carolina can play a lot of exciting hockey. So, I have to mention that. But really the reason I'm not going to watch this one much is because if any of the other games in the East are on, I'm going to watch them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And the final first round series in this, and wow, this is going to be awesome. It's a battle between two rivals, the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils. Their first playoff series, first playoff appearance in quite a while. So, Chad, we will go to you first to talk about this series. We'll reverse the order and go to Case next after you to talk about his team going into this series and the series overall. So we'll start with you with this one.
You know, I had a feeling you were going to do that, and I'm glad you did because it's kind of funny. This series, boys, is going to be a bloodbath. These teams historically hate each other, and if these games weren't at the same time that the Leafs games were on, I would be glued to it. But I'm going to have to be flipping back and forth because the NHL likely won't stagger the games because they hate people watching. But what a series this is going to be. I have the New York Rangers taking this one in 7 games. I'm sorry to say, Casey, I just don't think the Devils have enough experience to get over the hump. They were the better team in the regular season. All of the numbers indicated that, similar to the previous series in Carolina versus New York. Like, Carolina was clearly the better team all season, but there's just something about this New York Rangers team that, I just like a little bit more. Maybe it has to do with Shesterkin between the pipes and his ability to absolutely steal games. But, I mean, what a series this is going to be. The Devils had an incredible season, but like I said, I just don't think they're ready to win a playoff series. And maybe that's just me internalizing some grief about the Maple Leafs, how they haven't been able to get over the hump with their young core. But, who knows? I just think, I would love to see the Devils win this series, but I've got the Rangers in 7 games. They made some great additions at the deadline, getting Tarasenko and Kane. Plus, they have a great back end, incredible forward depth, and an all-star Vezina caliber goalie. So I like the Rangers in 7, but I think it'll be tight, very tight.
Yeah, before I start here, I want to point out that I'm not wearing any Devils merchandise at the moment. I have my lighting behind me in NHL orange, and I'm wearing an NHL shirt to keep it super unbiased, and a Toronto Blue Jays hat just to throw everyone off.
Leafs fan.
But I'm going to go with the Devils in this series, and it's going to happen in 7 games. This is going to be fun to watch for everyone but me. It's going to be a great series. These two teams have hated each other forever, but recently have really hated each other. It seems like there's been a scrum every time these guys play. Usually Brendan Smith is on the Rangers, and him and Michael McLeod like to punch each other in the face, but now they're on the same team, so they'll have to pick a different guy. I have the Devils because they handled the Rangers in the season series this year. They won 3 games and lost 1 game in overtime against the Rangers. And the counter to the Devils having kind of a lack in playoff experience is the way that this team handles adversity. They tied the franchise record in road games with 28 this year, and they were first in the league in comeback wins. They were never counted out this season, and I loved watching it. We'd go into the third period, Devils down 3 goals, and I'm like, they have a chance, and they'd somehow get it done. And I think that is such a great trait to have going into the playoffs. The Devils have the better PK. They won way more games, not way more games, sorry. I don't even know where I was going with that. Their goal differential, was way better, despite, Shesterkin in the other net. That's the real X factor here for me. That's the thing that scares me the most. But not when Jack Hughes, they can't handle him. They played 4 games this year. Jack had 4 goals and 2 assists. They cannot stop him at the moment. And if you do, the Devils have depth for the first time ever. The last time they made the playoffs was Taylor Hall. Hart year, they got into the playoffs, won 1 game against Tampa, and no one else could score. But this year, they have the depth. They're going to look for Andre Palat to really step up here and show these young guys how to win hockey games in the playoffs. And I'm not going to lie, I'm terrified of this New York Rangers team. They're a good team, but I've got a lot of faith in the Devils, and I hate myself to pick the Rangers and see the Devils win the first round, just like Chad mentioned with Toronto. So I've got the Devils in 7.
Yeah, going off that point, Kate, like I always say, if I pick the Maple Leafs to lose a series and they go on and win the cup or something, like, I'll just look like the biggest asshole on the planet. So I can't do that. So I'm glad that you went with the Devils. I do think they have a legit chance to win this series, and it comes down to a couple X factors for me. Shesterkin, like you mentioned, number 1 on the Rangers as an X factor, and also Patrick Kane. What kind of Patrick Kane can they get? Is he going to be scoring a ton of goals or be a defensive liability, or both? Because I think both are a possibility. And then on the Devils side, I think Timo Meier is definitely an X factor, because after Jack Hughes, if you want to run Meier on the second line, I don't know exactly what they've been doing, but you've got that 1-2 punch up front with guys like that. So I think Meier is definitely an X factor, had an incredible year, really broke out as one of the elite power forwards in the NHL, which is something we don't say very often anymore. So those are my X factors, and I think it's going to be maybe the tightest series here.
Yeah, something to point out about one traditional stat that the Rangers are beating the Devils in being power play. The Devils added Timo Meier, and in his 21 games, he put himself into 5th in power play goals in a Devils uniform this season. So they've really, I'm not going to say they fixed the power play 100%, but they improved the power play so much bringing him in, not to mention the physical play and just the amount of shots that guy peppers on net.
Yeah, this is going to be a great series. The Battle of the Hudson between the Rangers and the Devils. This is going to be awesome. I do have to take the Rangers, though, Case. I'm sorry, brother. Final 4 appearance last year. They loaded up at the deadline. They've got the goaltender, and I just think with that experience on that run last year, they're going to be really determined to get back to that place once again, and I do have them getting back to the Final Four. Spoiler alert there, but it's going to be really close. I think that the speed of the Devils, it's elite, and it's going to be a problem for the Rangers, so they'll have to do a really good job at defending that. And then, with New Jersey, we talk about all the offensive firepower and all the skill up front, but they defend a lot better. I think that's been a big part of why they've taken such a huge jump this year. They added a guy like John Marino. Brendan Smith has been nice depth-wise. We'll see how Luke Hughes does in the playoffs for this team. Siegenthaler, great defensive defenseman. Dougie Hamilton has had a Norris-type season. I just kind of wonder how the lack of experience will fare, and the goaltending as well. Can Vanacek keep up this breakout year that he's having? But it's going to be close, man, although I've got the Rangers in 6.
You don't have to apologize to me, because the expectations are low for the Devils, so if they lose, I'm like, hey, our best player's 21. Let's just look for next year. And then if they win this series, I'd get to go, hey, Harp and Chad, suck on it.
So true.
I'm fine
Like,
with
Case,
this setup.
There's a petty part of me that wants them to lose only so that you don't get to experience that joy that I haven't got to experience yet. I want you to suffer like the rest of us Leafs fans over here. But
Yeah, or like me, a team who currently holds the NHL's longest playoff drought. But
I mean, I got to see my team go to the
We're on
finals
the way up, so
in 2012.
True.
So
True, you did.